Quick question for all the women. Can you all raise your hand real quick? Of all of those women that have their hands raised, which one of you would rather be forced to carry an unwanted pregnancy to term?
I would. I would.
Time for the latest installment of Change My Mind, where we rationalize our positions on controversial topics. This week is the fourth installment of our recent abortion-themed series. Of course, it's been all over the media, given the recent laws regarding late-term abortion.
It's dangerous to put any kind of limitations or controls around that, because she in the end is the one responsible for that and those circumstances, and I don't think that it's entirely fair to judge them.
A fetus is literally a parasite. Like, it is sucking the life from a mother.
Yeah.
Every single day. Like, that's literally what happens. That's not even like...
Not a mother, I'm guessing.
When it comes to women's rights with respect to their reproduction, I think you should leave it to women.
This is about a woman's right to choose, and you as a man should not have a single say in that.
As per usual, let me know what you think by sounding off in the comment section below. I'll tell you, on this topic, I was a little surprised by how extreme most people's positions were on the issue. Here, see for yourself.
Hi, what's your name?
Mitch.
Mitch? Steven, nice to meet you.
Good
Mitch.
to meet you, man.
I have no idea whether you're familiar or not with the segment that we do, but it's basically an opportunity to rationalize one's position. I'm pro-life, and all that would encompass here. I guess you probably understand where I line up. If you disagree with me or think there's anything wrong with my position, you're more than welcome to change my mind.
I do think there's a lot wrong with your position. If you're going to try to tell more than half the world's population, more than half of America's population, that they are not allowed to decide to do with their bodies what they want to do, but a dead body, if they're not an organ donor, they're not going to get harvested for organ donation, then I think that's really messed up. And frankly, I think that women should have the option, legally and otherwise, to be able to get an abortion if they want to.
Okay, there are a few presumptions there. No, I would never tell 50% of America, as you put it, about half of America, what they can and can't do with their own bodies.
But that's exactly what the pro-life argument is. You're going to make abortions illegal, which then is going to force the women of America to either find a way to get an illegal abortion, which has its own host of problems, both medical, legal, etc.
As abortion does.
A safe abortion doesn't.
Sure it does.
What things are medically wrong with a medical abortion?
For the baby being killed.
Okay, I'm not talking about the baby.
Why not?
Because the simple fact of the matter is the baby is not an autonomous living being.
Really? How so?
Because it cannot fend for itself.
Okay, so would a 2-month-old baby not be an autonomous human being?
We're not talking about a 2-month-old baby. We're talking about a fetus.
Well, no, I'm using your definition. You said cannot fend for itself. So is fending for itself the standard of what constitutes a human being?
No.
Okay, so what constitutes a human being?
The fact that it is born.
Okay, so what makes the difference between a human being and not a human being is 7 inches about the birth canal?
Yeah.
Okay, so you would be okay with abortion all the way up to 9 months?
In certain circumstances, yeah.
Okay. What do you mean in certain circumstances?
If the birth would be fatal to either the mother or the fetus, then I do think that abortion should be legal.
Well, sure. Let's say if the birth would kill the mother. I don't know any major pro-life advocates who wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah, I've met quite a few, actually.
Oh, I have yet to meet one. So maybe you can give me your Rolodex. But I certainly would say if you're looking at a direct threat to the life of the mother, yes, I understand that.
Okay,
but let me say, it sounds to me like that doesn't really matter because you would support abortion regardless.
Yes.
Okay, so why bring it up?
Because people, especially in America, have the freedom to make choices, and right now, the pro-life argument is trying to infringe upon one of the choices. And quick question for all the women. Can you all raise your hand real quick? No. Seriously, can I get all the women to raise your hands real quick and keep them raised? I don't care if it's one-on-one. Of all of those women that have their hands raised, which one of you would rather be forced to carry an unwanted pregnancy to term?
I would. I don't live in
I appreciate it. No, hold on a second. I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. But I also want to continue with this. Thank you very much. I appreciate your passion. That's the danger of using mob rule as your moral compass. Sometimes you don't like how it turns out. And I could have actually told you that there's a significant amount of pro-life women here. A couple of things I want to clarify. I would never tell a woman what she can and can't do with her own body. That's not what I am doing.
Okay.
That's not what she is doing. And I would never force a woman to carry a child.
Okay.
Okay?
But that's exactly what the pro-life stance is.
No, it's not.
So what about the pro-life argument and pro-life laws and regulations and all that is going to allow women the choice? Mm-hmm. Because that's the whole basis of the pro-choice argument.
Right. Yeah, that's a false premise. What laws would allow the choice to kill another human being?
But it's not a human being.
Well, it is a human being. How do you define a human being? You said fend for itself. That's not a consistent line.
Yeah, and that's 7 inches of birth canal, as you said.
Well, you said you didn't agree earlier.
No.
Fending for itself. So, in other words,
No.
up until 9 months,
It's not a living human being until it crosses that birth canal.
Okay. Why?
Why? Because it's still in the womb. It is still a fetus.
So, well, hold on a second. So we're talking about right now a 9-month-old baby. Let's say 8-month-old, right?
But it's not a baby until it's born.
It's not a baby until it's born. So the only difference right now, I'm using a 9-month as let's pick an 8-month-old, okay? 8 months inside the womb, 8 months outside of the womb. Mm-hmm. One is a life and one is not?
Yeah.
Okay. So what determines human life is location?
If a woman has an 8-month-old fetus versus an 8-month-old child, that is a huge difference.
Because one is inside the womb and one is outside. The only difference is, let's call it geographical location.
But it's not the same as geographical location.
Okay, it's a location inside a womb or outside a womb.
But you're oversimplifying it.
I'm trying to understand. Okay, why is one a life and one is not?
Because the fetus itself is wholly and totally dependent upon the mother that it is attached to via umbilical cord.
Sure.
Right?
Wholly dependent, very much
wholly
just
dependent
like an 8-month-old born outside of the womb born.
However, the 8-month-old child, the infant at that point, that's the important distinction, fetus versus infant,
It's your important distinction. I don't think it's a consistent one, but continue.
Is the fact that a fetus, which has not been born yet, and an infant, which has been born, in my opinion, it shouldn't matter whether or not the mother wants to keep it or not. Whether it's...
But I don't. I guess I'm not following you. Why does that determine the value of human life? Is it because you don't believe it's a human being because you believe it's a part of the mother?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you don't believe that is a separate human being. You believe it's effectively a part of the mother.
Yes, because up until the point
Okay.
that it is outside of the mother, whether it's C-section, birth, whatever, then at that point it becomes its own living human being.
Okay, I'm trying
that is still dependent upon other people because it is an infant.
Okay, so I
but it doesn't necessarily need to be the mother, biological mother, that is still hooked up to the umbilical cord to fend.
So I want to make sure that I'm understanding your reasoning for why it is a baby outside versus inside the womb, even though it's the same age. You are saying that location, and that determines whether it's a human life because, in fact, when it's inside the womb, it is not a separate human being, it is a part of the mother.
Yes.
Okay. I've not misrepresented you there, I understand you correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. So an 8-month-old baby inside of the mother.
An 8-month-old fetus.
8-month-old fetus. It's not a person inside the mother. Okay. How many feet does the mom have?
Sorry?
How many feet does the mother have?
2.
Not 4?
Not 4.
How many fingers does she have?
10.
Not 20?
No. Infants are likened to...
it's a part of the mother.
Yeah.
It's a part of the mother. The mother would have 20 fingers, 20 toes, 4 arms, 4 legs.
Okay.
If it's a boy, does the mother have a penis?
You're trying to detract from the fact that
No, I'm trying to understand your position. I'm not trying to detract.
Hear me out. So, effectively, it is a parasitic relationship between a fetus and a woman.
Define parasite.
Parasite is a being that is wholly and totally dependent upon its host.
That's actually not the definition of a parasite.
Okay, so what's the definition of a parasite, Mr. Webster?
I appreciate the presumption. No, actually, because by your definition, a fully born child would be a parasite because they're entirely dependent on somebody. A good example of that, for example, with sharks, remoras aren't considered parasites, even though they are dependent upon the food that they would get from their larger predator. So the reason here is because it actually does so at the cost of its host, at the cost of the health care of the host, at the cost of the actual ability, often killing the host. That's what a parasite is. And parasites don't necessarily even have to be inside the body, by the way. They can be on or in.
I'm aware of that.
No medical literature would refer to a baby growing in a woman's body as a parasite. That's an opinion.
Okay.
That's
my opinion.
It's your opinion, but it's also your opinion that it is a part of the woman's body, but that doesn't seem to... I understand how you sort of juxtapose that next to, but the woman only has 2 feet.
Yeah.
The woman only has 20. So what are those fingers on that baby? What's the penis? Who does it belong to?
It belongs to the fetus, which, like we just said,
so the
opinion,
fetus does have body autonomy from the mother at this point. It is not a part of the mother.
No, it is a part of the mother. Because
the mother
it is
has a
still
penis.
attached to the mother.
Does the mother have a penis?
No, because the fetus is a parasite.
Because the fetus is a parasite?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to follow your logic trail here because before you said it was in fact a part of the mother.
It is.
That was what.
It is.
Now you're saying it's a parasite.
Why can't it be both?
No, I suppose it could be both. Okay. So it's a parasitic part of the mother.
Yes.
So the penis belongs to a parasite, or the arms and the legs and the feet and the functioning brain and the central nervous system and the ability to understand and recognize its mother's voice belongs to a parasite fetus that is in the mother and is not a human life.
Yes.
And that is why we have the right to kill it.
Yes.
Okay. All the way up until birth.
It, like I said before, if it is going to be a fatality to either the baby at that point, the infant, or the mother.
Yeah, well, no, again, we don't need to discuss that because you don't care anyway.
That's a very, very strong assumption to make.
Well, you said earlier that you would support abortion regardless, all right?
Yes.
Okay, so then why bring up whether it's a threat of the health to the mother?
Because no medical professional is going to make a late-term abortion unless it's going to be a fatality to either the mother or the fetus.
That's not true. It happens all the time.
Name one case where that's happened.
10 to 12,000 a year, 1.6%, 1.3 to 1.6% of about 1 million abortions each year. And as a matter of fact, you can go right now and watch a video that we taped in an abortion clinic on Tuesday, where they performed an abortion on a 32-week-old baby, no questions asked.
Okay, and...
It happens all the time.
Okay.
So, do you disagree with that?
Yeah.
You do disagree with that?
Yeah,
because well, there we find some common ground there.
Because no. I disagree with your stance on it because you don't know what that woman's life. Like you don't know that woman's life. You don't know that woman. You don't know what the circumstances are. You don't know anything about her. Do you?
Yeah, I do.
You know her personally?
I know exactly what her circumstances are because she told them to us. Yeah, she was a woman who had 2 children already, a 6 and a 9-year-old, and the youngest of which was now being sent off to kindergarten, and she didn't want to go through the mommy phase again. Okay. She wanted time for herself. Okay. So she went in, and they provided a 32-week-old abortion, no questions asked. That happens, late-term abortions, 10 to 12,000 a year.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure, because you jump around as to what's permissible and what's not. My line of logic here is whether you like it or not, it is consistent, along with the lady there who responded to you. A unique new genetic code is created at conception.
Okay.
Right? It sounds like you're saying whether it's in, whether it's out, depending on how the mother feels about the baby, it's circumstantial. It's just not a logically consistent way to justify killing another life.
Okay. Well,
but you're in that situation. Is abortion okay? The situation I just described for you, you can go watch it right now.
Yeah.
Well, then let's not go to the extreme exaple to make a point. Because if I were to say, hey, rape, incest, let's allow abortions, and say, but on the other side of the coin, would you be okay with making it illegal to perform other abortions? You wouldn't say so. So why bring it up? You're bringing up an extreme example that you don't care about. You support abortion all the way up until birth, no matter what. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're an M&M. There's no point in wondering where your pockets are tasting smooth.
Would you want to come in for just 2 seconds to kind of describe why you... Well, usually it's mostly people who disagree, but...
We don't usually do this at Change My Mind, but because this young lady was so passionate and because her opinion would seem so unpopular, I wanted to hear what she had to say. Hear for yourself.
What's your name?
My name is Glenn Elise.
Glenn Elise. Glenn Elise. All right. Glenn Elise, we can't take super long because usually we try to give the right of way to people who disagree.
Absolutely.
But right after you did it, you were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," which I appreciate. You don't have to be apologetic, but he tossed to the audience, our previous speaker, and said, "How many women here would want to be forced to carry that baby to pregnancy?" And you said, "I would because it's a living being." And you shouted it. Everyone here heard you. I think we heard you on our shotgun mics aimed the other direction.
Sorry.
Why such a visceral reaction there?
Because I've experienced with several family members and several friends throughout high school that had to go through that issue, and it's the simple fact that it has brain activity. The baby is. Legally, doctors are like, okay, you're pregnant, because they look for a heartbeat and they look for brain activity. So that's the first sign of human life, from a non-religious standpoint. And then also,
and I should, for people who, it was in the context of him talking about late-term abortions as well. So,
right? Yeah. So also, it's just even there's legal things that say that whenever the mother doesn't want it. We learn in school that if the father wants it, you can't abort the baby because it's his baby too.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not just like the mother's choice, because it takes two to tango. It takes two to make a living being. And also there's adoption. There are people who cannot have babies who want children. They want the opportunity to teach someone what they have to teach them in their life, and they can't do it biologically, so they adopt children. If you don't want your baby, you can give it to somebody who wants to take care of it. I have family members who can't have children and they want children so bad, and that's...
Let me ask you this, because I was kind of curious. He framed it in a way where he said, would you want to be forced to carry a baby to term? The fact that you reacted so passionately as you did makes me think that you don't see it as being forced to carry a baby.
No, it's not. A lot of my venomous also has to do with my religion, because I'm a Christian.
Okay.
But because this is about politics, I'm trying very hard not to put my religion into my answers.
I understand. I appreciate that.
So...
Well, the point that I'm making is that we're often told that if someone is a victim of a horrible crime like rape, right? And if we say, well, hold on, you still probably shouldn't abort that baby, it's like forcing a woman to carry it. Whereas all we're doing is forbidding someone from killing
another person. Right. It's not, and it can be a traumatic experience. I have experienced things like of that nature, and it is traumatic. It's horrible. But it's still not. It's not you. You're carrying. This is where my religion comes into it. It's like God gave you that baby on purpose. He knew that baby before it was even in your stomach. He had this planned from the beginning. That's just how it works. So that's another reason that I'm just like, it's not your choice anymore after that.
I appreciate it. What I appreciate most was obviously there was kind of some white knighting going on. Like, hey, women, don't you all agree with me? I'm on your side.
Yeah.
Seems to me like you're a little bit more empathetic to a life that could be growing inside of you. And it was very touching to see you respond. Again, we want to keep it civil and not yell at people, but thank you so much for
Sorry.
That's okay.
It was just, seemed so arrogant about it. It made me kind of
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, that was a refreshing change of pace. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Hello. What's your name? Maddie?
What's your name?
Steven. Steven, nice to meet you, Maddie.
My name is Maddie.
Maddie, we actually have a lovely lady who works for us named Maddie.
Yeah, I was told.
She's vicious.
We must all be very special.
Yes, she's very quiet, but we all suspect that she's a heroin dealer. I really like your shoes.
Hi, Maddie.
Yeah. She's from the hills of Missouri, so we have no idea what she's up to. Dig the shoes. Okay, Maddie, so I'm pro-life. I've sort of asserted my position here quite a few times, and really what this is about is hopefully not a shouting match. It's about the ability to rationalize one's own position.
And can I just say first, some of the men over there wanted me to speak up louder so everybody could hear, but I don't want to mess with your audio.
That's okay.
So if I speak louder, will it mess with your mic?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, cool.
That's okay. and we have a girl on audio there too.
Okay, awesome.
So yeah.
And you can also speak louder if you want.
That's okay. I don't want to be accused of, I don't know, mansplaining, man yelling. I don't know. There's a new man something, man interrupting I heard recently.
Oh wow.
I don't know. That's because I made that up. I'm not gonna lie, the man interrupting thing. But I wanted to catch on. You can pass it along. So I am pro-life. If you disagree with my position or disagree with the pro-life position, you are more than welcome to change my mind.
Okay. Where do you think that pro-life and pro-choice arguments stem from? Like, what do you think is the base argument, the base disagreement that people have?
That's actually a very good question. Where's the fork in the road?
Yeah. So what is the beginning fork in the road that makes people really kind of take up arms and get mad?
I think it's what constitutes a human life.
Okay.
It's where life begins.
I think so.
Yeah. I think it's, and I think as a matter of fact, that's the most important question to answer. I think it's the only question that needs to be answered. Otherwise, the rest of it is really one big giant point.
True.
And of course, as a pro-life person, life begins scientifically at conception.
Okay. I also think that that's something that you believe strongly. You know, like that's what you believe strongly.
Scientists, would say,
I don't think that I'm going to be able to change your mind on that, since that is the stemming point of where your beliefs come from.
Well, let me ask this: why would you disagree?
Why would I disagree?
Yeah.
Just because I don't believe that like human life starts at conception. You know what? I actually went all 4 years to a Catholic high school, and I studied intently. I studied the New Testament, the Old Testament, the Catholic Catechism, as well as certain letters written by different saints and apostles. And I did learn a lot about like abstinence and family planning and life at birth. I actually disagree with that nowadays. Not life at birth, sorry guys, life at conception.
Right.
But I disagree with that nowadays. But I do know a good bit about it, and I understand.
Shut the f up again, dude. Like, really? I can hear you. I can hear you. Come sit down. Hey, come talk.
You should have him up next. You should have him up next to see what he's got to say.
All right, we can. He's more than welcome to join in afterward if he wants to.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I just ask him real quick? I will be right back.
Now, this is the point where we were rudely interrupted by a screeching protester. You can see that entire confrontation in the video at the link below. But for this, let's go back to Maddie.
Okay. I do appreciate that even though you disagree with me, you pulled a wonderful prank by sending me to that unstable gentleman there.
I hope you had an exciting time.
Well, you know what really struck me was he just said, I don't want to talk, I'm just here to shut down your bull. And took pride in simply shutting down a conversation. And I would imagine that you probably line up more left than I do.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like you're somebody who would see virtue in shutting down conversation.
No, everything important has been first conversed about.
Right.
That's the first step to learning, and the first step to accepting change is to talk about things.
Right. I appreciate that. Would you consider that kind of a fork in the road between yourself and sort of the modern progressive left? Because what he just did, that's not atypical in my experience these days.
You know what? I think that also appears in more extreme right sections as well. I think anybody who's very offended by people attacking their personal beliefs, or people who may take things personally, have the tendency to not want to consider different points of views, as well as wanting to make themselves feel better by not considering other points of views. Okay.
I disagree. And the reason I say is because I'm about as far right as you can get. And not how the media labels far right, Nazis, but I mean libertarian conservatives. Generally speaking, we believe in more speech, not less. I would say that today, as it relates to free speech on campus and as it relates to speech, take your pick on any platform, it does seem to be exclusively coming from the left, using the bully tactic to shut people down.
And that's really shitty.
Yeah. I'm saying I appreciate that you're not that way. But I do wonder if, for a lot of liberals on college campus now, who maybe they consider themselves sort of classical liberals, I would say a critical thinking sort of classical liberal, that's how you appear to me, at least in the way you present yourself. If you find it grating to have people like that kind of setting the tone, the temperature on campus.
Well, I would just like to say he does not represent all of UNT, okay? There are so many people here with different opinions, with different beliefs. That man is not the spokesperson for UNT,
Yeah. But she knew it'd be funny, that's why she sent me over.
I bet it was hilarious.
Yeah, it was. He called Ben Shapiro a Nazi. He's like, I know Ben is like as Jewy as they get. I mean, not Jewish, like he's crossed over that. There's the line of Jewish and Jewy, and like look behind you, that's the line. He's so Jewy. Good friend of mine, I can say this. All right, so I'm pro-life. I can't remember where we were. We might just have to start this from the top. You asked, I guess, before where the disagreement, where do you think the fundamental disagreement occurs, right? Is that where we were?
The definition of what is human life.
And I posited that life begins at conception. And the reason for this, I truly see it as the only consistent line to draw, because that is when a new, unique human genetic code is created. Completely, it's autonomous from the mother, from the father. It's not the same as sperm. It's not the same as an egg. We had a guy come here and say, well, there's no difference between that fetus and you scraping off dead skin cells. Well, it is. It's entirely different DNA. I don't see any other line that can be drawn that is intellectually consistent. So that's what I believe. What do you believe constitutes a human life? Where do you believe life begins?
You know what? I don't think that that's something. I'm a big believer in science, and I think that we should look to science for certain ethical issues about things, such as learning about the science of skin color. It has nothing to do with your organs or anything like that. It's all about just adaptation to UV radiation. So I think that science is a way to go. And I also believe in the consideration of suffering of living organisms, every living organism. So I think that this is just my personal opinion. As a woman up here, I'm not the spokeswoman for every woman. I'm not. Lots of different women of color, lots of different white women, especially like on UNT campuses and in Texas, have different opinions than mine.
I appreciate that.
Don't at me.
No, I appreciate that, because there was a guy actually kind of came up here earlier, a white knight. He said, all the women raise your hand. Who would want to be forced to carry a baby from rape? And she yelled, she's like, well, I'm not being forced. I'm just not letting you kill the baby. And then he wasn't very comfortable, and he left soon after. So I'm only speaking for myself.
Yeah.
You're only speaking for yourself. So where do you believe life begins? Or what's your view, your worldview on abortion?
My worldview is more centered around suffering.
Okay.
And I don't believe in the suffering of living organisms, of sentient beings.
Okay.
And so I think the consideration of suffering is really important. I think that the consideration of the suffering of a being that may be inside you is also important. But the thing is, I believe that the most qualified people to sit here and to talk about this do not want to sit here and talk about this. Women who have had abortions, or women who are pregnant and thinking of getting abortions, or any women that has had to make that choice or think about that choice, is a person who I think should be up here explaining about the first-hand experiences, the emotions they go through, what their family members say, because there's lots of things that we don't consider about abortion. And I think that if we think that women don't obsess over this question, that's a false conclusion. That is a huge decision a woman has to make in her life if she chooses to.
I think in some instances you're correct. In some instances, my mouth is called out, you're correct, in some you're not. We had a woman who sat down who had had an abortion and frankly hadn't given it much consideration as to where life begins. We've had men sit down here who have not had an abortion and have had much more cohesive answers. I would ask you this though. I know you've talked about how your worldview centers on suffering, and I can appreciate that. But why do you believe, for example, I would assume that applies probably to animals as well?
Oh yeah, I'm trying to go vegan, guys.
Okay, there you go. She's being very respectful. So you obviously would want to minimize suffering to animals. Okay. Do you believe that you are less qualified to talk about that issue than a man?
I would actually say that I'm probably more qualified. Okay. Well, let's make sure that we have the proper definition of man.
Okay.
A person with a vagina who can get pregnant. You know, I'm fertile. I can get pregnant. Some women are infertile.
Men have vaginas and can get pregnant now too.
Yeah, sure, whatever. You know, I believe in that.
I don't. Would you say that only farmers should have opinions on the suffering of animals?
No, but I do think farmers have more direct experience with the suffering of animals, and maybe therefore their opinion should be taken a little more seriously than people who've never seen an animal.
But you probably would find more farmers who would advocate for more suffering of animals than yourself.
But that has something to do with...
My point is, Should only animal farmers be able to have that opinion? So I think I understand where I'm going here. I don't understand why a woman, or particularly a woman who's had an abortion, would be supremely qualified to discuss an issue if, in fact, it relates to the killing of another human being.
I'm not saying supremely qualified, I'm saying more qualified. So by that I mean somebody who has a little more experience or a little more education about it.
I would disagree. I think for the same reason I think you are just as qualified. You are equally as qualified as any man here or any other woman here, person of color, name the race, gender, orientation, on murder, on assault, on battery. I don't think it matters if you've committed it or not, or even if you've been the victim of it or not. I think what is morally correct is an absolute, certainly as it relates to the physical harm of another human being against their will. So we are told this a lot, and I think we even had someone say, if you don't have a vagina, you can't have an opinion. I don't agree, and I don't understand how that changes the fundamental essence of what abortion is. Is it the ending, the killing of another human life, or not? And like you said, that's where the fork in the road starts. And I think that everything else is negated if we don't come to a clear definition as to what that is.
You're right, and I think, for me personally, as I'm going to say again for the third time, I think we should probably look a little bit to science for that as well.
Okay.
And I think that religion has a really big influence on what we consider life and what we consider valuable. But I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you think in any way at all possible, maybe now or historically, that the definition of life has been influenced by the fact that it's women who carry this life? So maybe perhaps women historically who've been oppressed have not had the right to choose what happens to their bodies and the right to choose what happens to this life.
Oh, sure. And
women have been forcibly sterilized.
Well, yes. And I would say even more so than that, women have been socially engineered or manipulated to place different set values on that baby, throughout history. You've seen that, with Jewish women in Nazi Germany. Sorry, I'm not.
No, I was like.
Well, the reason is because we actually hear you better when it's in the chest. That's kind of the rule.
Yeah, okay.
I promise this isn't a Harvey Weinstein thing. I can pull it away if you need me to.
Thanks.
But I think, for example, Nazis placed a different value on the babies in the womb of Jewish women in North Korean internment camps right now. People who are dissidents, they force abortions, right? So it's not only people being forcefully sterilized, but there have been different values set upon different kinds of women, often based, or the babies inside of women based on race, ethnicity, or political worldview.
Very true.
I agree. That's terrible. I think we both agree that that's historically been true and it's terrible. And that's also why I have such a problem with the abortion movement in the United States, because it stems from a eugenics movement from Margaret Sanger with Planned Parenthood setting up abortion clinics in impoverished areas in order to try and eradicate the country of Black Americans.
I don't know much about that. That's something that I'm not very educated in.
Okay. Would you look it up after this, though? Margaret Sanger, she's the
most
founder
definitely.
of Planned Parenthood, and she had disdain for Black people.
You know what? Women of color have been historically exploited more than any other group in America, my personal belief, and from the things that I've learned. So I'm really
Certainly
not surprised that even organizations who claim to help women have historically exploited them. That's not surprising to me. Just because it's Planned Parenthood, though, I don't think means anything in particular. In industries all over the world have exploited women. Beauty industries, health industries, clothing.
Yeah, but specifically targeting areas so that women of color kill their babies to try and reduce their population, I would say is a little bit more perverse than telling someone they should use this kind of lip gloss to look like Claudia Schiffer.
And are we sure that it's to reduce? Are we sure that it's some sort of genetic,
Yes.
ethnic cleansing?
Yes, Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist.
Okay, so you're saying nowadays
That's
that for
these
sure
are the roots of Planned Parenthood, and this is
Okay.
why you find them disproportionately set up in areas where you have women of color. They would argue that it's due to poverty and that they're there to help them. That's not the history of the company. But I think we both agree. That being said, whatever value society places on something doesn't change what it is. For example, I think we would both agree.
I don't agree with that. I think that ideas can be just as impactful as actions. I think that the ideas that we've been raised with can definitely influence what we do and the people that we meet and how we treat them.
I agree with you, but I don't think that necessarily means it's right. So, for example, slavery, good or bad?
Bad.
Okay, we would both agree. These aren't trick questions, right?
Yeah.
But it was legal. It still is legal all across the world.
So
Not
yeah, we
legal in the
shouldn't go
United
by
States.
that's a very common mistake. Do not go by legality. Legality is not the same thing as ethics.
As what is more exactly? Well, I say that because you said different societies have placed different values.
Yeah.
So we can't necessarily go by right now when we're talking about abortion, right? There was the Abortion Survivors Born Alive Protection Act that every single major Democratic candidate for president voted against. And this is babies who have survived abortions. This bill would just require that doctors provide them with the same medical care to babies delivered that didn't survive abortions. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, they all voted against this. And when we're talking about abortion in the United States, I think we're talking about well beyond the point where it might even be a debate. When you're talking about, we are even talking about babies that are entirely viable outside of the womb that are being aborted on a regular basis, and that's legal. It doesn't change the morality of the action. And that's why I think it is fundamental to determine what a human life is and where that begins. And as you've said, we start with science. And I hope you understand, for me, I know that you said you went to a Catholic school.
Yeah.
I am a Christian, but I haven't brought any of that into this conversation.
Yeah.
Here. Scientifically, the moment of conception is when there's an entirely different genetic code that determines everything. Hair color, eye color, height, sense of smell, athletic ability is created at conception. Science tells us that is a new, unique human being, and I don't think that we ever have the right to kill another human being.
I think that that's your interpretation of science. I definitely believe that, stem cells have the potential to turn into any sort of specialized tissue, and you're right. It is a seed that has the potential to become a new person.
Well,
the reason that I'm pro-life.
Sperm is a seed, but that's the exact. For example, I don't see. I don't see sperm killing a sperm the same as abortion. Otherwise, when I was a teenager, I would be committing mass genocide like every other hour when I was 14 years old.
That's what Catholics believe.
Yeah, I don't. So the point is, it's very different. A fertilized egg cell is entirely different from an egg and a sperm. That's the science. So I want to make sure that I'm not misunderstood here. I don't think that because it's potential necessarily a human being.
You think it is a human being?
This is a unique genetic code that has been formed that determines what kind of a human being it will be. That does not happen until the moment of conception.
Okay, so
That's
you think
the aha
that?
moment.
So do you believe that then genetics is what makes us human? That it's our special gene code, the special Homo sapien gene code is what makes us Homo sapiens?
Well, I believe that, first off, human beings give birth to human babies, right? So we know that when that genetic code is established, it's not going to be a fish, it's not going to be a dog, it's going to be a human being. And that is the moment where exactly what kind of a human being is determined. And I just don't think that we have the right to intervene and terminate, kill that human being. That's why. That's why I think it's the only logically consistent line. And I think we would both agree viability is not really a consistent line because some babies are viable at different times, depending where they are, depending on what point in history, location, whether it's inside the womb or outside the womb. I don't think that a baby that's at 9 months, 5 seconds before it leaves the womb is less of a human being than the baby that leaves the womb. For me, the only logically consistent line, getting a little cold here, I've been out here for a few hours now, is conception, scientifically. And where would you say life begins, or what constitutes a human life?
Well, I'm a big hippie,
it's a far cry from the modern leftists who shout people down.
I'm a big old hippie, so my definition of life and what it is to be alive, I guess would have to. Well, would you consider a bacteria alive, even though it's not sentient? What sorts of values do we ascribe to non-human animals? Human life. Okay.
Yeah, human life. Only human life is what we're talking about here when we're talking about abortion. Bacteria is not the same as a human being.
Listen,
opinion.
you know what? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know when human life starts, but I think it's important we should know when suffering starts.
Okay. So would you draw the line at suffering?
Yes. I think that's what. But the thing is,
but you
that
don't know yet, so I don't want to press you.
Also, let's not overlook context here. I am pro-life because I really want to represent for the young women and all those women who have been sexually assaulted and who've gotten pregnant. I really believe that young women should have a choice. Like a 13-year-old girl who gets raped by her uncle, she should have a choice of whether this is going to affect her for her whole life or whether this is something that could be taken care of in private.
Well, let me ask you this, because we've had this happen a lot today. So let's allow exceptions. If people bring up a radical exception to the rule to try and justify their rule. So let's say we make exemptions for rape and incest. Okay? Let's say I agree with you on that. Then would you agree that all other abortions should be illegal?
I think it's so contextual. I think it's
fair
impossible
to bring it up
to say.
Because you're bringing up an extreme example when the vast majority of abortions are not committed because of that, because of rape or incest. The vast majority of abortions are simply performed because a woman doesn't want to have a baby.
And I think that that's okay. I think that it's okay.
As long as there's no suffering.
Yeah, but the thing is, how are we supposed to know when suffering starts?
Well, that's where we go to science. It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? I do endorse the abortion bills that are being proposed and being passed, because even though if I don't believe it's perfect, I think that it may be a step in the right direction.
Well, how do you mean abortion bills that prevent the late-term abortions, or you support the abortion bills that further the line of where an abortion can be performed?
I guess further the line.
Okay. Well, this is important because you talked about suffering. Where then would you want us to be able to perform an abortion? Where do you think there should be a line drawn?
I'm not a doctor. I don't know about this.
Okay, well, I can tell you the suffering starts here.
Okay.
Okay?
But
abortions are performed all the way.
You're just telling me this as like one person to another person.
Okay, well, let's assume I'm not lying.
Okay, let's assume that this is like scientifically credible, which it probably is.
Yes. Suffering begins. This is more brain development. Okay? So suffering begins here. Abortions are being performed all the way to here. So when you say you support bills being proposed, the reason I ask is because here's a bill right here. The survived abortion survivors, I keep forgetting the name, it's like Infant Protection Abortion Survivors Act, I believe is it's a whole mouthful. Sorry, my hands are really cold here. If you want to look through that, this was proposed, and this was opposed by every major Democratic candidate. That would simply require doctors to provide the same medical care to babies who have survived abortions. These are babies that are out of the birth canal. They are living, and doctors would simply be required to provide them the same medical care as other babies. Every major Democratic candidate, as a self-professed hippie who's against suffering,
I'm not a Democrat, though. And I'm not a liberal, and I'm not progressive. I don't believe in labeling. I believe in contextual things. I think that it's so hard to ascribe yourself to a party. I also think that...
But I bring it up because you just mentioned bills furthering the line, and I'm saying the line is here. Here's the line. And now we're even saying, well, hold on a second, can we at least have a line after the baby's born or survives an abortion where the doctor is just required to give it the same amount of care?
Like, do you think that...
and I do say this because only Democrats want to further that line. No, you don't have to protect that baby if it's born alive if you intended to have an abortion. So when you say you support the laws that further that line, I'm telling you, the line in Texas is here. You can see right here, that's the line in Texas. This is the line in Colorado. So where would it be?
I think that this line should be accessible to young women. I just think that...
Which line? Where?
This line. The most... I think that
so all the way up
young
to 9
women
months.
should have, should have access to that.
Okay, well that's fine, but just don't say that it's not consistent to say you care about suffering.
Listen, I'll admit it. I prioritize suffering of people who are already alive. I do. I prioritize suffering of people who I recognize as already living, which I guess you could say is technically a bias of what is life and what is considered life.
I think it's a very skewed view of suffering. Listen,
but
this right here, I want you to look at this for me.
Yeah.
This baby that you just said is okay to abort, they are going to chop off its arms and legs and jam forceps in its head, and it will be fully capable of feeling pain. And if you are comparing that to the suffering of a mother who doesn't want to bring it to term because it might inconvenience her, I think it's a very skewed view as to what suffering is. I am going to side with not killing this baby.
I'm not talking about one mother. I'm talking about all mothers.
Okay.
I'm talking about all women who've been put in situations that was not their fault, that they got victimized in situations that are really f***ed up.
Sure.
Situations that can change your life and how you think of yourself and how you look at yourself in the mirror. And I just want these options open to women.
Well, like I said, if we eliminate those scenarios, rape, incest, right? We eliminate those scenarios. You did say abortion all the way up to here. For people who can't see
if it's available to one person, you have to make it available to everybody.
Why do you say that?
Because, well, actually, that's not true. Oops. But I think if there was a law that was passed, it would be hard to separate certain people that could and could not allow to have abortions.
You're right. It is hard.
I also think that would be
most
unfair.
Abortion clinics, they don't even ask. We just did actually a video. I would recommend you watch it if you get the chance. We went to a Colorado abortion, a late-term abortion clinic. All we do was go in and show people what an abortion is. And a woman had an abortion at 32 weeks. That's 8 months, just because she didn't want the baby. No questions. They didn't ask about rape or incest.
Okay.
Just an abortion and an 8-month-old baby.
And I have no problem with that. This is the thing, because
really?
I told you I prioritize the suffering of...
Well, no, you're not prioritizing suffering. You're prioritizing the convenience of a mother over the killing of a baby. Because, come on, let's be honest here. You and I, neither one of us are denying that that is a human life.
Well, we don't know that woman personally. We don't know her life, and we don't know if she actually...
I do.
You're talking about a specific woman?
Talking about a specific woman.
I don't want to talk about specific women.
But this happens at a rate of 10 to 12,000 abortions per year.
But I don't want to talk about specific women.
Is that not ending a human life? You just said you'd be okay. Can we both agree that's ending a human life at that point?
Yeah, you know what? I think so.
And that baby will suffer. There's no debate about this scientifically.
Yeah, most likely the baby
And
will
you
suffer.
are prioritizing, and again, the vast majority of abortion cases, particularly late-term abortion cases, are not performed
Are you
out of medical
saying that the
necessity.
vast majority of abortions are late-term abortions in
No,
all of
no,
the
no,
United
no, no.
States?
What I'm saying, the vast majority of abortions are not performed out of medical necessity or due to rape or incest.
How many? Could you tell me a statistic on how
many
many
are
women
late-term
get
abortions?
abortions from 27 to 40 weeks?
Yeah, well,
Like, what's the
okay, so
statistic
late-term
rate of
abortions
that?
is about 1.3 to 1.6, depending on who you ask, depending what statistics you use. That's 10 to 12,000 abortions per year in this period that are not medically necessary.
Okay.
Again, as someone who not only value, and I do place human life as more valuable than animal life, I'm going to be honest about that, but as someone who does not believe that a human being has the right to physically harm another human being,
Oh, I don't believe that.
but we both agree that's a human being and they're harming them. I don't think it's justifiable at all. So I appreciate you sitting down, and I appreciate taking the time. I think that some of your views are maybe not necessarily consistent with what you think them to be.
You know,
if you are against suffering.
I'm 20. I'm still figuring myself out.
I appreciate that.
I don't think that I'm gonna ever believe what you believe or support what you support, but that's okay. There's so many different people in the world who all have different opinions.
And I would hope that you can appreciate that as someone who does believe, for example, that this 34-week-old baby is a human life and capable of feeling pain as a science, that it's my duty to go out and try and educate people and do everything I can to save those lives, just as I'm sure you do for animals.
And you know, that's an admirable reason to go do things like that. And yeah, free speech, exercise your free speech.
And I didn't scream at anyone or try and shut them down.
Yeah,
So
there's
look at
nobody
this.
screaming or anything, so that's great.
Well, no, there was, but he's gone now. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Maddie. I really appreciate you taking
Thank
the time.
you.
I know
It's
it's
really
cool.
nice
I hope
to
you
meet
get
you.
your gummy.
All the M&Ms you could want. With peanuts or plain.
By the way, if you want to see more installments of Change My Mind or the kind of content that traditional media just can't create, support the show by joining Mug Club. LouderWithCrowder.com/Mug Club, $99 annually, $69 for veterans, students, or active military. You get the full daily show as well as a catalog of other content, and we appreciate it. On with the show. But I'm pro-life across the board. If there's anything there that you disagree with or you think I'm wrong, you're more than welcome to change my mind.
Okay. Why do you believe in pro-life?
Why am I pro-life?
Yes.
Just because I don't believe that a human being has the right to take the life of another human being against their will at any point.
Okay.
Now, what's your position?
I believe until a baby takes its first breath after it's been born, then it is alive.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mean, hold on, until, or you mean after it's taken its first breath?
After it's, like, once it breathes in air,
okay,
after it's gotten out of, like, the womb and it has released all of the fluids that are in their lungs,
okay,
then I think it's alive.
Okay. So before that, it's not alive?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so that would be all the way up until 9 months, really, up until a 7-inch travel through the birth canal.
Anytime it has to be anytime it has to be removed due to birth complications from C-section, or anytime it is born naturally, it has any complications where it has to be born prematurely, then and it actually is still alive after that process and breathes, I believe it is alive.
Okay. So you're talking about birth complications. Why does that matter? It sounds like you're okay with aborting babies whether there are birth complications or not, all the way up until 9 months, correct? Am I mistaken?
I believe you can, if the parent or basically just the parent is willing to have that make that choice by themselves and does not believe that child will either they can't take care of it or they or that child will not be living in a suitable environment, then it
Sure. A couple of things. I know you said parent, not parents.
If a single mother either through a violent altercation, rape in this case, or a
well, I just want to make sure that, because you're bringing up a really extreme, very rare example to prove a point on the general rule. And I don't think it's necessarily productive, because it sounds to me like you don't care. So let's say I were to say, okay, yes to all abortions from rape, incest, or forcible acts of violence. Would you be against all other forms of abortions?
Can you clarify the question?
If I say sure, abortions for any cases of rape and incest, would you be against all other abortions?
Like all other cases
that are not rape and incest?
Yeah.
You would be against all of the other abortions?
No.
You would be for them?
Yes.
Okay, so then why bring it up?
Because it is an instance which...
but it doesn't matter, you support it anyway. You support it, right? You set up until the baby takes its first breath and it's outside of the womb. The mom can abort it for any reason, regardless of rape or incest.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess my question to you is, what makes that not a human life, let's say at 8 months and 25 days, versus being a human life, by your definition, it's just that first breath outside of the womb?
Because anything inside the womb is being controlled by natural instinct of heartbeat, blood flow, all the brain, like electrical signals in the brain is literally just testing itself. Anytime you feel it punch the womb wall...
That's not accurate.
It has to.
Up until 9 months, the idea that it's just testing itself in a testing phase, that's not accurate. When you have babies that are born at 25 weeks, the earliest I think is 21 weeks. So you're talking about aborting fully viable babies because the mother wants to, as long as it hasn't taken that first breath. But I do need to make sure that we both understand what you're talking about here. You're not talking about a clump of cells that is testing brainwave activity. You're talking about a fully functional human being. So my question, I guess, to you is, what constitutes a human being, right? It seems like you're okay with killing all the way up until birth canal. All right, what defines personhood? Why is it okay to do that?
What do you mean by that?
You're taking the life of another human being.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that okay? Or, maybe I'm mistaken, how do you define a human being? Do you not believe that it's a human being because it hasn't breathed air?
It hasn't, it is, in my opinion, it is still cells. It
all the way up to and including 9 months?
Yes.
Okay, so why is it no longer cells at 9 months, 1 day if it's born?
Because,
what makes it go from cells to a human being, I guess, is where, and it's not a gotcha, it seems like if you're so eager and willing to end the life of another human being, it'd be pretty important for you to define what a human being is.
It has not had a connection with another human being, and you can still feel love for that, let's say, creature or human being inside someone else.
Well, why would we say creature?
Because
do human beings give birth to non-human being babies? Do humans give birth to fish, dogs?
I'm just not gonna, like,
it
is a multi cellular organism inside the womb, basically.
Okay.
I'm just gonna
Which
not
just
say,
looks and sounds and fully functions like a human being.
Yes.
You just don't want to call it a human being.
Yes.
And you're okay with aborting a human being all the way up to 9 months. Let me ask you this, since you just said until they take their first breath. This is the Survived Abortion Bill.
Okay.
And I'm sure you probably heard from Governor Northam. This is the entire DNC platform, everyone running for president, where they actually voted against it, where if a baby is born and has survived an abortion. So this is even after your point, which I think is pretty extreme.
Yeah.
I think even most pro-choice people here wouldn't be okay with abortions up to 9 months. But what about after a baby is born? Let's say it has difficulty breathing.
Then it's alive.
Okay, even if it can't breathe?
If it's on, like, I was born and I had difficulty breathing.
Mm-hmm. So why wasn't it okay to abort you?
Because my parents didn't want to.
But if they wanted to, that would be okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm not convinced.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I just think that's an extreme example.
Okay.
But I appreciate you being completely honest.
Okay.
I just don't think, I was hoping we can find some common ground, but if you think that your parents can abort you after you're born just because they feel like it, good luck.
M&Ms you could want.
So, first of all,
what's your name?
Aaron. Hi.
Aaron. Nice to meet you, Aaron. Steven.
Nice to meet you.
So, pretty simple today. I'm pro-life across the board, obviously, with the.
That's a great opinion.
Okay, okay. Well, I see you're hostile. Right there, you just said I'm going to take you on, and you seem a little upset. What is it about my position that you?
It's bizarre that, because you're talking about the legality of it. It's not just your opinion on it, right?
No, I'm talking about the morality of it.
Okay. Well, it's my own body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a woman. If I don't want to give birth, abortion to me is just like forced miscarriage.
Mm-hmm. To you.
Yeah.
So that's a great opinion.
But I'm trying to convince you.
Right. That is an opinion. What if it's not your body?
If it's not my body, it's not my business.
Okay. So if that baby inside your womb is not your body, it's an autonomous human being, then you don't have the right to kill it.
Why?
You don't have the right to kill anyone else.
Fetus is not conscious.
Okay.
It's not, especially since legally, you can't abort up to 9 months. It's in the first trimester.
No, you can. Yeah, you can.
Legally?
Yeah.
Well, that's stupid.
Well, I'm glad we find some common ground there.
Yeah.
You disagree with Andrew before you.
Well, I mean, up to 9 months, that baby's about to pop. I think it would be fine if that baby, was, about to die in the first few minutes.
Okay.
There's no point anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But this is something that happens a lot. People bring up an extreme example like rape, incest, or the baby's about to die to make a point. Sounds to me like you support abortion regardless.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's not even, that doesn't matter so much. I guess what it comes down to is, what do you define as personhood? You said it's my body, my choice.
Yeah.
But if there's a baby inside of you that is in fact not your body, then it's not your choice.
It's my body.
Okay, how so?
Yeah, because it's my f***ing blood. Like, that child is half my blood.
So if someone
it's my body,
if
it's
someone
my
gets
DNA.
if you give a blood transfusion to someone else, do you now own their body?
It's like DNA, man.
It's actually
genetics.
not. Yeah. Do you know when new genetic DNA is formed, a whole new genetic code?
So you're
not your
saying
DNA.
I could give blood to you and you'd be my son?
No. What I'm saying is that at the moment of conception, there's entirely new DNA formed. Not your DNA, not the father's DNA. It's DNA of an entirely new human being that defines everything from eye color to height to male pattern baldness.
But it's still half my DNA.
It's a portion of your DNA.
That went into it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then by that logic, as long as it's a portion of your
my
DNA,
child.
it would be okay to abort a 9-month-old child, a 2-year-old child, because it's your DNA.
How can you abort a 2-year-old child?
Kill it.
It's not the same.
Well, I'm just trying to understand what you define as personhood and what gives you the right to terminate a life that isn't your own. You're saying because a portion of it is your DNA?
Consciousness, experience.
Okay, consciousness.
Yes.
Okay. So you believe what determines personhood is consciousness.
That child is not going to know anything.
I just want to make sure we understand here.
Yeah.
Let me allow you to, how do you define a person, a human being? What makes us people? What makes us human?
What makes us human? Well,
yeah. What
human
defines
experience? Just like I said earlier, it's the experience.
Okay.
We're all friggin' humans. We're all made up of the same kind of DNA. You look at you and you look at me. We're both human. Cool. But what makes us a person, personhood, is our own experiences.
Okay.
Nature versus nurture, all that, psychology.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if someone, let's say, has Alzheimer's, dementia, or someone is born with severe brain damage or doesn't have functioning limbs, they're not necessarily entirely conscious of the world around them. They're not able to develop relationships. Does that make them not a person, not a human being?
No. Okay.
Well, I'm going by the definition of consciousness. If someone is unconscious, do they cease to be a person? Can you kill them?
No.
Why not?
Because it's unconscious. It's not experience.
What if someone has never had any experiences? I've known people, I've worked with people with special needs who are not able to experience the outside world. Right, we use the term autism is on the spectrum.
Went day by day, experienced every hour, every minute.
Okay.
They experienced that.
Okay.
It's not just interpersonal things. It's not just, even if somebody wasn't able to experience the world, couldn't leave their home, they still experienced what it was like to eat, what it was like to drink, what it was like to, read a book, see the TV, look outside the window.
Experience pain.
Yes.
A beating heart, hearing their mother's voice. Would these not count as human experiences?
Oh yeah, it does.
Okay, so then it's a human that you're killing. And you're okay with it.
That hasn't had any experience.
We just agreed that those are experiences.
Yeah, but that child It doesn't retain any of that.
Well, neither does a 1-year-old. Neither does a 2-month-old baby. So I'm trying to get to the point, when does it become okay to end a life? At what point is there enough retention of memory for it to be okay for you to kill that other living being?
When it's not born.
When it's not born?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. So now we're talking about location. A person ceases to be a person depending on location, inside or outside the womb. So it seems to me that you would support abortion up to 9 months.
If it was necessary, yeah.
No, not if it was necessary. Going by the definition of personhood according to your own logic.
Man, that's just semantics.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
You just said you said up until it's born, it's not a person. So then what's the problem with aborting a baby up to 9 months then? Earlier you said that wouldn't be okay. It's not a person.
It depends on the situation.
How so?
Man.
No, I'm curious. How so? Do you want me to explain my position? The only consistent line of logic to define what makes when a human being is formed is at conception, because that's when entirely new, unique DNA is formed. Consciousness isn't consistent, as we've gone through. Viability, as we went through with Andrew, is not a consistent trail of logic. And location. You don't cease to be a person if you're in that library or out of that library. You don't cease to be a person if you're in the womb or 7 inches outside.
Okay. I see your point, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be able to get an abortion if it was so necessary.
It certainly does. It certainly does. If we agree that that's a person, then you shouldn't be able to take the life of another person. You can never take the life of another person. You can wave your hand around as much as you want, right, with your own body, unless it hits me in the face. You can't take the life of another human being.
Sure, I can.
Okay, we disagree. I don't think you can kill another human being.
Okay.
Thank
I
you
guess
very
I
much.
wasn't able to convince you.
No, I'm really, I'm compelled, but I don't understand your consistency of logic here. You said you were against 9-month-old abortions, but then you said, well, until it's born, it's not really a person. So now you just said you think it's okay to kill another human being as long as it's in the womb. You acknowledge it's a human being, and you think it's okay to kill it because you want to. That's not going to convince me. What would you present to convince me otherwise, I guess?
Well, we talked about those extreme experiences that people have, the rape,
sure,
needing to do all those things. I guess if you were in my shoes and you were a broke college student who got raped and, was disowned by her family because they were super religious and they didn't accept that.
I like the editorializing here, but yes, go on.
I'm just putting a story together.
Okay.
Then you would be okay with bringing that child into the world and not even being able to provide for it, not being able to give it any kind of health care. If that child got sick, it would die anyways because it wouldn't get, vaccines.
What?
If that child...
It wouldn't get vaccines?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm
that
confused.
child was going to die.
Are you asking me, would I be okay with you
and
bringing
you
that...
couldn't get vaccines because you might not be able to afford health care.
Yeah, I don't agree with the premise. So 2 things. First off, you bring up an extreme example to make a point. Sounds to me like you don't really care about rape or incest. You support abortion anyway. In the sense that it doesn't matter to you as it relates to abortion. So if I were to agree to, let's say, okay, in all cases of rape or incest, abortion for all, would you agree with all of the cases, no abortion?
Yeah.
You would?
Yeah.
So if there were only an exception for rape and incest, you would agree that abortion in every other instance would be immoral and should be illegal?
No.
Okay, well then why bring it up? Now, as it relates to the story that you're painting here with religious parents who excommunicate you and don't help you because you've gotten pregnant and you've been raped, I think that's horrible.
Oh, it's horrible.
I do think that would be a horrible story, and my heart would go out to a woman like that.
So you would, if you were in that situation, and yes, it is an extreme, but to put you in that extreme, what would you do?
Well, I of course wouldn't abort the baby.
So what would you do then? After you've given birth to the baby, what would you do?
Yeah, I guess without abortion, what choices are present? I support 4 other choices: abstinence, contraception, motherhood, adoption. In the case of rape, a very, very small extreme example, as we both acknowledged, you have motherhood or adoption. I just don't support the choice that would involve killing a child. I think that's pretty consistent.
I think you have a good opinion.
I guess if you believe it's an
can't-
opinion.
yeah.
I think
I
it's
can't-
important to scientifically determine where a life begins, and I don't think that you've given that much thought. And I think that's the crux of all of this. Is obviously, if we acknowledge that's a human life, but it seems as though you're just okay with terminating it. People who are looking to make headway with people who are pro-life, they would have to present some kind of an argument that would prove that this is not a human being, that it's not a person. But when you say it is a person, it is a human being, I don't care anyway, I have the right to kill another human being as you've presented, yeah, I'm not going to be on board, but I appreciate you sitting down.
Well, there you have it. Another installment of what I would consider mostly productive discussions. Did anything here surprise you? Were the views more extreme, more reasoned, more moderate? Let me know in the comments below, and stay tuned for the next installment. Looking forward to seeing you there. Okay, if you like this video, you watch videos on YouTube. If I were Jimmy Kimmel, if I were Stephen Colbert, or Trevor Noah, I would tell you to subscribe. But I have no corporate overlords who demand that I do this demeaning promo. I do the demeaning promo because I choose to. Subscribe or hit the notification bell because I need you. I need you. Please do it.